Right Pack Radio, a podcast produced by Winding Trails Media, for writers, by writers.
Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack.
Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, author of various crazy things and currently working on kind of rebooting his work and writing radio dramas. And I do have something that's in the works, but I do not want to talk about it until it's much further along. And, however, I will be at the St. Louis City Library Central Branch at the NaNoWriMo event. The weekend, I believe it's November 26th, whatever that is, right after Thanksgiving, that Saturday. I will be down giving a presentation on story structures, all of the top 7. And I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, I only learned 1. It's amazing how many there are out there. So come down, enjoy. It's gonna be for free. It's at from 2 to 5 is a lock-in, and they're doing that every week, every Saturday throughout November. Oh, and with me, I'm sorry, I've lost my mind. And with me is my lovely co-host,
who is wearing a very fine hat, as is the woman who
only
pointed to.
Fine.
Only if you post it, nobody will believe it.
I sent it to you already.
My name is Kathleen Kayembe. I am a paranormal romance author under the pen name Kaseka and Vita, and branching out into non-romance fiction. So this will be entertaining. Wish me luck, guys. It's a crazy world out there.
Hey, go for it. And also with us today is
Brian R. Cook. I am the author of The Iron Chronicles, which is a steampunk YA. Check it out, Iron Horseman, Iron Zulu, and soon to come Iron Lotus.
Hooray!
On that note, come out to Main Street Books on November 26th for Small Business Saturday, the beginning of Christmas traditions, and the release of Iron Lotus. We're going to turn all of Main Street steampunky. It's going to be fun.
It's all because of the book. Actually.
Yes, it's entirely. I am kicking it up like crazy.
And what day is that?
Saturday, November 26th.
November 26th.
Did I say August 26th?
You almost
probably
did.
That was a while ago, bro.
That was a while ago. It would have been great, wouldn't it? No, and then also do check out the local author open house at the Spencer Road branch on November 17th. That's a Thursday. And then you can also find me at the World Bird Sanctuary, I think. This might be airing just after it, so if so, it was awesome. On November 12th.
Nope, it will be airing before it.
Oh, cool. So yeah, come out to the World Bird Sanctuary on November 12th.
It will be awesome.
It will be awesome.
We have full coverage.
There will be owls and cool birds and such.
Owls.
I'll be there just for the owls. Forget Brad.
Did you say owl will be there?
I'll be there just for the owls. Exactly.
We're terrible.
And also with us today?
Melanie Lucas, author of nonfiction under the name Melanie Polanyi, and at some point in time I might start actually having time to start writing fiction again.
Let's aim for the Christmas season.
Yeah.
And also with us?
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator, still hard at work at my self-published fantasy novel Threadcaster, which is hoping to be out next spring, but we'll see. I'm falling just a smidge behind with all of the promotional events. I'll also be at the local writers thing with Brad in November, and if you come out to his big reveal, I'll definitely be there. Probably trying to sell more dog parks.
Well, who knows? You can dress up with your hat.
Indeed, my fantastic new period-specific hat.
There you go.
It has a little veil over my eyes and everything. Y'all are jealous and you can't even see it.
Yeah.
And also with us is?
My name is George Soroy. I am the Vice President of the Missouri Writers Guild. I am also an audiobook narrator, editor, and producer, and I write science fiction for the young adult reader. My first 2 works, Excelsior and From Parts Unknown, are both available on the Kindle. Excelsior is also available on paperback and audiobook from Audible. And hopefully by the time this airs, my beta readers and my editor will have approved the draft that I just finished for Ever Upward Part 2 of the Excelsior Journey. Yes, saying that all in one breath.
That's what training goes.
That's the voice training. Yeah.
Yes, and hopefully by the time this airs, will this be airing?
This will air, I believe, the weekend after our wedding. So while we're acting like
perfect,
we got married.
Then there is still
time.
then there is still time for me to see you on Saturday, November 5th, at the St. Louis Central Library from 2 to 5. Debbie Mamber-Kupfer and I will be discussing audiobooks. We hope to see you there. It's part of the big NaNoWriMo weekend event that David is doing as well.
Yep. So come on down and enjoy. And today what we're going to talk about is something very interesting, something a little different. And George, since you're part of Right Pack, I can't say it's a fan-requested topic, though technically that's how you started off with us. So
technically, yeah.
It's a fan-requested topic. I'm going to claim it anyway. And that is...
Hey, just don't tell the details. Just say a fan requested it.
Yeah. They don't know.
Hey, what the heck?
Okay, now they know, but they didn't.
They
Until 5
ruined it
seconds ago.
all.
We can fix it in post.
Whatever. I don't
not gonna
bother
fix it
fixing it.
in
in
post.
No, he's not.
He's not going to fix it.
Not this way.
So I bet by now you guys are all wondering what we're going to talk about. Okay, what we're going to talk about is writing in shared universes. And George, this is a topic, since I've already said it, you kind of tossed it. What are we talking about with this?
Basically, what we are discussing is it's not a series where you have where you're just following one specific character going through all these different things as they're constantly growing and changing. What we're doing is we're basically talking about the introduction to various characters who have their own situations, and then eventually bringing it up to the point where you can start bringing all of those characters together in one bigger story. The biggest type of universe that's out right now is what's called the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That started with Iron Man in 2008, and it was also picked up by The Incredible Hulk, which was also released the same year. Some people don't remember that, but it was. And then after a break in 2009, which, funny enough, you can when you think about it, 2009 was the last year that a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie was not released in theaters. Ever since then, it's just been going every single year.
And for the rest of our lives.
And it will keep going for the rest of our lives, yes, because Marvel has quite a bit of properties that they are willing to incorporate more and more into this universe.
And they've already announced them out to 2025, I believe.
I can believe that.
Before you do, just a quick question. So Deadpool that got released this year, last year, or whatever, that was not part of... Was that right part of
Deadpool is actually... That's actually a funny thing, because Deadpool is actually part of a secondary Marvel Cinematic Universe that 20th Century Fox is doing.
Okay.
They started theirs with X-Men in 2000.
Yeah, they're the ones
however, there is talk of pulling the X-Men in with
well,
the
they gotta
Avengers
populate
stuff.
that dumb Infinity War.
Yeah.
There's gonna be 66 heroes in that movie.
Okay, so...
Well, Doctor Strange is setting up a possible way that it could happen.
You'll just bend the
Interesting.
universe and
Yeah.
pretend he's in Inception. And
Benedict will bend the universe.
oh no!
Wow.
Ben
Okay,
Catch.
obviously the subtitle of this one should be Pun Day. Okay.
It's always
We
Pun
always
Day when
record
I'm
on
here.
Pun Day.
So this is interesting that you bring up shared universes in that fashion, because by that same example, comic books are shared universe stories.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah.
And that actually segs into the other kind of shared universes that I hope we can talk a little bit about today.
Okay.
Shared universes in which there is one universe and multiple writers write within that universe.
Oh, yes.
Like Borderlands is a great example in fantasy fiction. Borderlands is a town, and many different fantasy writers have written stories taking place in that town with different characters.
We should make a distinction between this and the video game franchise, because the video game franchise is pretty big right now, and I don't want people to get confused.
No, Borderlands has been around for decades now.
Yeah, it predates the
yes.
Borderlands video games.
Yes. Oh, Border Town. There we go. Border Town. Borderlands is different. There we go.
Oh, okay,
I wrote down
yeah.
Borderlands. Border Town is the name of the town. That makes more sense too. I was like, it's a town. Why is it lands?
You see, that's a good thing that we defined because it had already seeped into your mind.
I know.
And taken you hostage.
I think
Video
it's
games will do that.
Terry
They
Windling
will.
and maybe Alan Kushner. Maybe were the editors. I'll look that up. But a bunch of different people writing in the same town, characters that may or may not interact, similar to how the Marvel Cinematic Universe began.
It's actually like really fun to see them not interact for a period of time, because that way you can build them and build them and build them. You're basically taking a whole bunch of different people and basically doing their own part one, some of them their own part two, and then that actually like creates that real extra energy when you start bringing them all together. If you just bring them all together at once, it's not as satisfying as we saw earlier this year.
Doesn't that run the risk, however, with so many people creating within the same universe of the too many cooks scenario?
There is that possibility.
Burnout is a problem.
Thankfully, like Kevin Feige, who runs Marvel Studios, he runs a very, very tight ship, and so he is basically like making sure that that there's not crossing information, that there's not a risk of burnout, and just really kind of keeping everyone on their toes.
So he's a gatekeeper then.
He's very much a gatekeeper, yeah.
Yeah, to do something like this, you've got to be a gatekeeper.
Mhm.
A favorite author of mine does this as well. Actually, a couple of other authors have written in it. I've talked about David Weber with the Honor Harrington series, which is called the Honorverse. And there are other authors who have written short stories that have been published, but with him on it, like Timothy Zahn is one I can say right off the bat. But Eric Flint wrote an entire different series in the Honorverse that's all occurring at the same time. Of course, David Weber's blessing on that, as well as Bane Books.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have a gatekeeper. I remember David Weber being at ArtCon a few years ago talking about that. And they run everything past him and run questions to him, like, why is this? Oh, now we understand. So it keeps everything together. There's never a break in that verse.
Yeah.
Unlike Star Trek, I'm sorry, I'm going to go Star Trek versus Star Wars for a second. I love both.
I was about to do DC versus Marvel, so you might as well.
Okay. If you think of all the books that were published for Star Trek and for Star Wars before Disney bought Star Wars, and for the record, I love both series, I love both universes, so I'm not one of those, I have to be one way or the other. Star Trek didn't care about the other books that were written in the universe. There was no cohesion between them except for the characters existed. In
There
fact,
was cohesion, but very few of them written by the same author.
there was that.
Yes.
But even if you get into the comic books, when Star Trek first came out as a comic book, they suddenly had left the galaxy. Which we know in the original series they can't do that.
Yeah.
So in Star Wars, everything had to be run through George Lucas. And while that was a pain in the ass, I understand, for a lot of authors,
Yeah, he kept tenuous control over
he
things.
kept tenuous
anyway.
control, and he kept the universe very tight and sealed until Disney came through and said, that universe doesn't exist, and we now have a Disneyverse.
Well, Disney pretty much did the DC thing.
Right.
DC looked at all their properties. There were too many cooks in the kitchen, too many ideas, too much going on, too many crossover events that was hard to keep track of, and to benefit new inductees to the universe, new inductees to Star Wars, all those 7-year-olds who now want to be Rey. Fantastic. We don't need them to get confused. They just wiped the slate on the DC universe and said, we're starting everybody at episode 1 again and go. And mixed results. Yeah. They've done it a couple times.
And and they stumbled out of the gate with their first attempt to do a similar shared universe on the big screen, because the original run was not supposed to be Man of Steel. It was supposed to be Green Lantern.
Yes.
And that came out and barely broke even, to the point where they just decided they were going to take a break. They were going to take that out of canon, even though they had set up the sequel in their little stinger right at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
But then they decided, no, Man of Steel is gonna go ahead and start it off.
I know, and because of it now, we don't get Green Lantern until the end.
But
of
you know,
the
like, but
DCU
also
run.
the main problem with the DC universe is that they're bringing out their heavy hitters right at the start.
Yeah.
Right.
So they're not giving us any sort of real reason for sticking around as much.
Well, to be honest, they're starting with the Justice League, which is exactly where they should start, because we've done Superman, we've done Batman. That was
Batman
the 80s and the
exhausted.
90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's been done, and they tried to revamp Superman, and I
tried
enjoyed it, but
twice.
until he yanked the damn Kryptonite Island out of the freaking water.
And then started stalking, his ex.
Yeah. But
There were
by
some
starting with the
stumbling
Justice
blocks.
League, we're going back to the Super Friends. We're going back to the cartoons that Bruce Timm did, and that is where you want to go with DC. As much as I love these guys individually, there is a beauty to that cartoon, and I hope they just take the cartoon and make it live action.
Well, the reason that the MCU started with Iron Man was largely because they knew that Iron Man could carry his own movie, and
exactly.
the modern age of film goers, not comic book people, but film goers, didn't know a whole lot about him, so they could introduce him. They don't need to reintroduce
That is a
Superman.
major element. That is a major element right there.
They might need to reintroduce Wonder Woman, because they've been ignoring her for a long time.
Oh, yes.
But
we get a movie.
the magic is that of the
We
Avengers
finally get a Wonder
movie,
Woman.
and the reason why they had to set everyone up beforehand is that you want to see these characters interact with each other. So starting with Justice League, when we already kind of know who all these people are, or maybe we don't know who Martian Manhunter is. Maybe people didn't watch the cartoon show.
Yeah.
But that's a great place to introduce him, like the way they reintroduced the Hulk into the Avengers movie. Mark Ruffalo didn't have a Hulk
He
movie.
didn't have a solo,
Yeah, but we were able to reintroduce him as Bruce Banner, and that was okay, because we knew everybody else.
Yep.
And the introductions of the new characters didn't feel so like, oh, there's too many people and I can't keep track of all their powers, because we knew them, and we already have that with Justice League.
Speaking of which, I'm turning this over to you next. Speaking of this, just quick sidebar. You talked about Wonder Woman briefly, which is celebrating its 75th year. If you missed it, now since we're doing this since we always post this in the future, October 21, United Nations installs Wonder Woman as ambassador.
Yep.
As much as I love this conversation,
Likewise.
because I am a total geek and I love comic book movies
Yes.
so much, I think we need to bring it back to what writers can learn from shared universes.
Well,
Yes.
So
and
I'm a writer. I'm not, a Hollywood writer. I'm not writing for a TV series, which is a kind of shared universe. I'm not writing the Discworld series, which is a kind of shared universe with one author.
Right.
And I'm not writing for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is a shared universe in so many different ways. It's, mind-boggling.
Yes.
So what can I take from all these shared universe stories to put in my writing to make it better?
And one of the things I want us to go to eventually, I love that you opened this door here. The next door through is what are some of the complications? For example, George and Brad, you guys are published by different publishers, but let's say you wanted to write in the same universe. Think about that too while we're going around. So, but her question first.
One really good way to kind of think about doing it is if you have like a big event that's going on with one book, that event can be so big that when you're introducing another character with a whole other story, you can actually allude to the big events that happened in that first book. You don't have to introduce any of the characters or anything like that. It can be just like, oh, did you hear about like what happened with this and this and this, and it can be basically just like a good kind of starting point for wherever your character is going to wind up going with their story.
So let's say I'm writing a novel with just a series of novels with just one protagonist.
Okay.
Is that kind of like alluding to events that happened in the previous book so that readers who didn't read that book will kind of get it? Or
Well,
is that different?
that's more like just like a regular series. If you have like one series with one protagonist, then you're basically just like it's just like a similar series like with any other author. But if you take like you want to start off this protagonist, and then right afterwards you want to maybe do like a part 2 or something with that one, but then you want to start another series with this protagonist. All you have to do is just kind of mention different little things that happened. It could even be something as similar as just that character watching something on TV. Like watching that sort of image unfold. One of the really good examples, actually, like that use that really well, with a very low budget was Kevin Smith with the Viewisk universe. He would have his characters just dropping little bits and pieces along the way, just like saying at one time my friend had this incident happen to them, and all of a sudden that just started off a conversation. And then you have other places that they're visiting just along the same lines. You could have even supporting characters just making cameos throughout.
Like Jay and Silent Bob? Is
Exactly,
that
like Jay and Silent Bob. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you can even get subtle with it. So, Quentin Tarantino, there'll be a sign. There might be, like a billboard or something that is advertising, say, a restaurant or something like that from one of the other movies.
Exactly.
And that's how you know that you're in the same universe.
Well, you gotta make a decision, that's different from, like, the Pixar method.
Yeah.
Which, there's a theory that they're all in the same universe.
I like
which
that
you
theory.
can subscribe to if you want to, but in factuality, they're just homages to each other.
Yeah.
They
but Quentin's
include...
doing it very specifically.
Yeah, so that's... I just wanted to make the difference.
Yeah.
He's not just putting them in there as, haha, you saw Dogma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Like, it's basically your sandbox method. So if you want to share a universe, and the sandbox method is basically that we're all playing the same sandbox. So we're all affecting each other in different ways. Which means that, yes, if you have a main character, you're probably not going to write that main character. What you're going to do is spin off, either, as George was saying, another event or something like that, another character from that universe or something like that, or somebody else who's in the same city, who's in the same world, and you can play there. The difference from that is the TV method of, like, Serial, where, and not to pick on Star Trek, but they're kind of well known for it. Anyone can write for Star Trek. When they were doing their, when the shows were on, anyone could write for it. You could send in a spec script. If they liked it, they'd pick you up. So the point being that you didn't have to stick. You had to stick to the big points, but you could, have an episode where something happens to a character or something like that, and play the ensemble, pick somebody out of the ensemble, something along those lines, and write an episode about them, and that's fine. And it becomes, there's 24 episodes or 22 episodes in a year. And so there's probably a dozen or more writers going in a year. So that's kind of playing in a shared universe, but it's less so because you're writing about the exact same people. You're just taking the journey over here for a bit, and somebody else takes it over here for a bit. And the showrunner keeps the main storyline of that season going. And a lot of TV is like this. I mean, anyone, if you want to write for TV, it's real easy. Write a spec script, send it out to Hollywood, go with it, and go from there. And you can start writing for multiple television shows, and this is a huge career path that is totally open to anyone who wants to write this way. But it's a little bit different than the shared universe effect of writing interlocking stories that are not necessarily going to affect each other, but all kind of are aiming in the end to a certain place.
Another thing you can do, just on a sidebar, first off, what he just talked about, Marvel does on the Netflix and MCU universe very well.
Yeah.
Well, when TV writing's kind of like this because you have to do so many episodes so quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously, Arrowverse and the DCU are not the same, as we'll see a different Flash and all that, but Arrowverse does it great across all its shows. But sometimes, too, you can also do mashups. And Fred Saberhagen did one of my favorite mashups. And I can just, when I think about this book, I can picture the original authors, what it would have been like if they would have gotten together. Fred Saberhagen in 1978, I believe, got published, was the Holmes Dracula files. Sherlock Holmes and Vlad the Impaler. Dracula. And they solve a mystery together. Could you imagine what that would have been like if you could have had Bram Stoker and
Conan Doyle.
Thank you. My mind, I'm trying not to cough.
Yeah, he knew that. We all know he knew that.
Yeah, if they would have collaborated just on the book together to put that into the universe, and then they could break off, continue, and then come back together.
Knowing both their personalities, I don't know if they would have gotten along too well.
I don't know, but then again, if
maybe if
there's any-
Bram promised to kill Sherlock Holmes
Yeah.
in the book, then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle will be like, yeah, okay.
But then again, you got the TV show, which is trying to show everything that's going on with Sherlock Holmes and Houdini. Where Bram Stoker was there, they were best of friends, basically. So who knows? They could have met.
Well, they were both on the metaphysical side of life, so
Yes.
they probably enjoyed each other that way.
Mm-hmm.
However, old Hollywood did this. You had the Wolfman and the
Yep.
Mummy.
I just
Yes.
watched Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
You had
I love that.
Frankenstein. But all of these movies start as individual monster movies, and then eventually, because this is Hollywood's way, they started putting them all into the same movies. I was just watching the one with Frankenstein and the Mummy Man, or the Wolfman.
Oh, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It wasn't that one though. It was another one. It was later because the Wolfman wasn't. That was not in the title.
Is it House of Frankenstein?
Yes,
Yeah.
House of Frankenstein.
Okay.
That was it.
Yeah.
Well, Universal's trying to reinvigorate
Exactly.
that.
Mhm.
And now Universal's gone back to that, and they want to do the exact same thing.
Universal monster movie and cinematic universe, because everything's a cinematic universe.
Exactly. But these are ways you can do this. It's actually pretty cool.
Well, there's actually just to throw out another shared universe that's in the process of gearing up right now is Hasbro.
Oh yeah.
Hasbro is starting their own.
Yeah.
They're using the success of the Transformers films,
Yeah.
and they're going to basically kind of spin off some of their characters into their own solo films. But then you also have G.I. Joe, Micronauts, ROM, I think Inhumanoids, and Mask,
Yep.
all getting their own shared universe.
Good luck to them. I'm sure China will love it.
Oh, yeah.
Ken Hasbro? Really?
Yeah.
Really? Ken Hasbro? Ken Hasbro? Jen's giving me the dirtiest
Another
look.
It's like I'm not following you down that rabbit hole.
However,
It's too
the
late.
G.I. Joe movies have not put that into a good light, so we will have to
No.
see where this goes.
The second one, I think, did a better job. The first one, it's
I liked the first
Don't
one.
get me wrong, I really enjoyed the Baroness and Destro. There were just other aspects I was not as keen on.
So,
Yes, Kathleen.
first question I guess would be answered by the Discworld series is, can one author have their own shared universe?
Oh yeah.
By
yeah.
our definition.
absolutely.
The second question then is, if there is a shared universe in which there are multiple authors, do you need the written equivalent of a showrunner?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
say so.
We should
Yep.
reference our episode on series Bibles.
And
Yes.
someone should definitely explain what a showrunner is, for those who do not know.
A showrunner is essentially one man who's been in charge of the studios, or one person who has the end all be all say of what's going to happen. And then also this person is ensuring that everything that gets written and everything that gets produced is all aiming at a central goal. Whether that's a shared event, a big battle that's coming up, or some kind of crazy tie-in that you want to do, or if it's just simply that no one breaks the mythos of the universe that they're trying to do. So that Star Trek suddenly doesn't have like lightsabers or something crazy like that. So a showrunner generally is going to be in charge. Nowadays, usually the showrunner is the head honcho. They are the executive producer of everything, and they greenlight everything so that they have their hand on everything that is produced. And they're the ones who, say okay and sign off on that and kind of let it go.
And it doesn't have to be one person. Like
It
now,
doesn't. But
in the
usually it
Star
is.
Wars universe, George Lucas used to be the showrunner. And in the Disney version of the Star Wars universe, a board of directors is the showrunner.
Well, Kathleen.
Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah, Kathleen Kennedy is now the end all be all of Star Wars.
Yeah, don't just throw out Kathleen's name like that. Some Kathleen get
Okay.
confused.
Yeah.
Like, what?
You didn't know? You were in charge of all of Star Wars.
Don't
You
throw the
went.
ball, Kathleen.
I'm
I'm
such
honest.
crazy
Joji
dreams.
claim thy power.
Oh my goodness.
borrow from
Kathleen
the
Kennedy
latest
is the
Rogue
best
One
initials. I am in
Rogue One
no way
trailer.
biased.
There is so much power. Okay. So anyway.
Yeah, she's KK too, so you're all set. Just,
I've loved her name since I was really little and
Yeah.
didn't know what the heck any of the credits meant on cartoons.
One of the good examples, and I'm going to turn this over to you, of Control that we're talking about is also Gene Roddenberry with the television version. I mean, he had so much control that CBS got into an argument with him and his lawyer. The lawyer was claiming he was having a heart attack, and the producers on the other side go, "Good, I hope you die."
Well, I mean, Roddenberry's one,
Yes.
Bruce Timm's another, Josh Whedon's another.
Very much so.
You know, I mean, we have some glorious showrunners out there nowadays. I think Hollywood has learned its lesson from some of its earlier incarnations. Avi Arad,
I'll debate that, but that's all right.
Well, I mean, you know, Avi, he was kind
No,
of
not about him.
no, I know. I'm just saying he was the forerunner of today's like massive showrunner
Mhm.
when he was doing Hercules and Xena and all that kind of stuff. So
There's a shared universe.
Yeah.
Hercules
Yeah.
and Xena are two different shows that had their own personalities, but crossed over a couple times because both characters are existing in the same universe.
Universe, right?
And you actually hit exactly what I was going to mention, is that there's a difference between, you know, like you have a shared universe and then you have what is basically the crossover, which is where, you know, like where you literally have, you know, just two characters from two different directions all of a sudden converging for this one moment and then going back along their
because we
chosen
think your
paths.
viewers and your viewers might be similar, so we're going to share this, you know, 4-episode arc.
I
Or
get it.
which is why we were given Freddy vs. Jason
Yeah.
in 2003, and it was it was actually something that New Line Cinema and Paramount had been trying to make happen for many years, but since Paramount had the rights to Friday the 13th, New Line had the rights to Nightmare on Elm Street. They couldn't decide on a good way to go about this that would be mutually beneficial. It was only when Jason Voorhees was brought into the New Line banner, that's when everything really started going. But that brings you up to, you know, like the whole point of the showrunner, just like we were saying before. As long as there was one person, and in the case of Freddy vs. Jason, that one person, the one person that kept on pushing it was Sean Cunningham, the producer of Friday the 13th, to really kind of get things going. So that is also something to keep in mind, is that you can have, you know, like, you know, characters just kind of just showing up and colliding with each other, but then, you know, they'll go about their business. But then a shared universe is something much more complex and much more fun to play
Well,
around
I
with.
think one of the successful crossovers is the Predator Aliens.
I was going to
Yes.
say.
Oh,
Yeah, that was a
sorry,
very good
I didn't
one.
step on that. Feel free, jump
Yeah.
on.
No, it's too late now, Brad. You
Oh,
have to continue
The
as
thunder
you
has been
began.
stolen.
Yes.
But and I'm going to use this as a segue to that other question which I said we want to get to.
Mhm.
One of the biggest failures, I think, recently of a crossover was a 2-episode crossover between Bones and Sleepy Hollow, which was on television.
And has been mentioned before.
Yeah, it's been mentioned before. I've mentioned this before, and it's one of the weirdest ones I've ever seen. I love Sleepy Hollow. I really am not a fan of Bones, so technically I should fall into their niche audience with my background. So I can't tell you
No,
why I
I
don't like it,
would-
but it doesn't matter. The issue with it is Bones is a very hard science, criminal science story.
Sort of
Sleep-
like a police procedural.
It's very
Yeah.
much a police procedural. Whereas Sleepy Hollow is a paranormal story, usually dealing with some type, could deal with crime, maybe not, but still a paranormal. And
Why don't
those
those
two
two show up?
don't work out too well, and definitely not the same universe, and not definitely as a crossover. It's like I sat there watching both episodes, going, "What the?" And you can then put the final word on that.
So what would you think about an X-Files Sleepy Hollow crossover?
That would make sense.
Yeah.
That would make sense, but if you make a X-Files Bones crossover, that can actually be worked out.
That can work out because
Bones,
a
I
big
mean,
crux
that's
of the
all.
X-Files was
Mhm.
trying to prove the paranormal stuff was happening.
Right.
And Temperance Brennan would be the one over there saying, no, it's not.
Right.
It's not happening. I don't believe in paranormal stuff.
So for crossovers, though, it sounds like you have to make sure the genres are compatible.
Right,
Yeah.
as well as the authors on the crossovers and the shared universes. Because I love Angie Fox to death, everybody knows that, but if I'm writing let's say I'm writing a hard-boiled detective story, and she and I get together and I put her, and we somehow agree we can do this, we put her, I'm sorry, my mind is going blank.
Sorry, Angie.
Sorry, Angie, but the Demon Slayer series somehow gets inputted into that, which is a paranormal romance. By the way, guys, if you haven't read it, I don't know why. Please do, because it's hilarious. But it does not fit. It would not fit a hard-boiled, let's say, Philip Marlowe, Sam Spade type universe. So if that's the case, then that just derails the entire story, and the universe is going to go. And that's what's technical.
It sounds like crossovers are two pre-existing universes that just, their lines cross for a little bit of time.
Yeah, normally, because usually the crossover is totally used by Hollywood as a way of saying,
crossover, yes.
This Tuesday night audience and this Wednesday night audience are different, but they're similar enough that we think that we can get them to watch our show for 2 nights straight and sell it to advertisers for twice the money.
Yeah.
And boom. So this is why we see crossovers.
So crossovers
and sometimes it could be a two-parter where part 1 would be in one character's universe, part 2 would be in the other character's universe.
That's successfully done by Flash.
Yeah.
Crossovers then seem to be
right back to back.
To expose one audience to a different show that they might appreciate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons it's good to have compatible genres.
I will say that books do it more often in anthologies.
And anthologies do it so that you can expose other fans to other authors that they might like.
Right,
so
it's
you'll
not
have
the same story. That's the big difference.
those aren't really crossovers.
No.
I wouldn't call them. They're just anthologies that collect stories of paranormal romance or paranormal investigation by different authors.
You
and
write
so
it for one author and then you read the other stuff.
Exactly. So that's more of a expose different audiences thing. But I want to talk about the pitfalls of shared universes, because we've discussed crossovers, but a universe in which everything is happening in the same, world, whether or not it's in the same location in that world, can have certain pitfalls, especially if they're, if the author is not keeping track of things properly, or if there's not an overarching person in control of everything to make sure, this stays compatible with the universe that we have in mind. So can we talk a little bit about that, pitfalls to avoid if you're in a shared universe or writing in one?
This is huge, and this is a big thing right now, because we are now entering into all of these long-running series of books that had one author at the helm, and now sadly that author has passed away, or has grown too old to continue writing in it, and is now turning over their series to new authors. Some of this is co-writing, and I'm not throwing him under the bus because I actually did enjoy some of these novels, but the Clive Cussler Dirk Pitt novels. The first, well, not the first, but the long-running series of Dirk Pitt novels that Clive Cussler wrote are amazing books. I love pretty much 90% of them. He then got kind of old and he wanted to turn over, so he went into this weird period where he was starting to write with other writers and writing with his son, and it's still a Dirk Pitt novel. Like the first one was still a Dirk Pitt, but it was not the same. It didn't feel the same. It didn't have the similar, veins running through it. Even though it was still an adventure novel, it was still marine based and all this kind of stuff. Now his son has taken over and is basically writing Dirk Pitt's son, and that has improved a bit. And so that's a way that you can successfully pull it off. However, on that same vein, I think some of the later Patterson stuff that's in some of the similar universes and some of that, I have not enjoyed them as much. I don't find that I like them as well because they don't have the same feeling. I can hear the other writer writing a character that I knew well. And so that's become a thing as we move into this kind of time period where they really want to continue these really successful series, but these newer authors they don't have that same voice. And I think this is where voice becomes a huge thing. If you're dealing with a shared universe, you don't have to have the same voice, but you really do have to have a similar voice to the world you're trying to capture. Because as a reader, we were just talking about the music of Star Wars. The new Rogue One music is really good. I love it to death. It's not John Williams. You can tell instantly it's not John Williams. But it's similar enough that I kind of dig it and I'm cool with it and I'm going to be okay with seeing Rogue One and having no problems with that. So, voice is similar in this fact of there is a thread running through everything. It's different, and that bugs me in some points. But if it's, like with Clive Cussler. So now that we're doing, I can't remember his son's name.
Dirk.
No, is it? Yeah, Dirk
That's
Cussler.
Dirk.
Yeah, right.
That's why he named Dirk Pitt.
Yeah. So
That's
now that his son has taken over and is writing, kind of essentially a new series, I'm enjoying it more.
Okay.
If it's on voice, go ahead and answer first.
Yeah, so how much of that would be different if, say, the son had begun just writing, like, a different character? Because it sounds like when they were writing the original Dirk Pitt, it was problematic because the author's voices were not the same together as the single author's voice was when he was writing the series on his own.
Yeah.
But once his son started writing about a different main character that was similar enough because he was a child of the original main character that you got that familiarity, but he was different enough that he was a different character, you were able to enjoy him more. So
I still don't enjoy them as much as the Dirk Pitt novels.
Okay, but it was more...
Even the ones that the son's writing, I don't enjoy them as much as the Dirk Pitt novels. Just because there was a thing. It's hard to say exactly what it is. It's like a 60s kind of mentality. It's a different type of universe that, Dirk Pitt was running around in. Dirk's different than the new character. So, because of that, I prefer the old novels than the new ones.
Had a certain je ne sais quoi.
Exactly.
If we want to talk about differing voices writing within the same universe, let's go back to one of my favorite things in the entire world, which is complaining about the Babylon 5 novels.
Where's popcorn?
I won't go too much in.
I'll go start popping it
because it's sequel stuff, and Kathleen still hasn't finished the show.
Thank you.
But the fact is that the novels are written by a bunch of different people, and all these characters that we have followed throughout this evolving story, because it is an evolving story, it's not episodic, like the characters move and change and stuff happens to them and it sticks with them. You can tell when you're reading these books which ones were written by people who'd done their homework and which had written by people who did not do their homework. The Centauri trilogy pisses me off the most because all these characters I know so well because I did the homework. I've studied the show in depth because of how much I love it. And when you're trying, if they asked me to write, Londo and Veer and Jakar and Delenn and all of these people, I could do it because I've studied them and I know character and I know that if they were presented with this situation, well, they behaved this way in a previous state, in a previous episode, or if they're presented with this other situation, they would behave this way because of this trauma that happened to them. I know all that stuff. Even the races, we spend a lot of time with the Centauri in the Centauri trilogy, of course, and the stuff that the race does as like a group thing doesn't jive with how I know this race to just feel. Like it's a feeling, because I know them. I've explored and thought and researched and all these things, and Joe Straczynski, who's the showrunner, he gave Peter David, who was the writer of those books, an outline to follow. But it still didn't feel like his universe, because there were certain things that I, as a fan, could identify as not feeling like that universe. Other people read these books and they love them, because it's got the character names in it. And it follows the certain, like a couple, it has a big war in it, and that's a very Babylon 5 thing. They have a big war, it goes all over the place. And it does bridge the gap between two events shown in the show that didn't have an episode to cover them. So they're like, oh good, I finally know what happened. That's okay for some people. I was discontented, because
you don't
the
think
voice
the right
was
thing
different.
happened.
Well, no. It's because they weren't my people.
Yeah.
You don't turn sweet, innocent, source of all light Veer Kodo into a one-line slinging action hero who hits his wife. That is not something that happens. That's not the character I know. No matter what bad thing happened, and some bad things happened to Veer, around Veer, and he always responded in a thoughtful way.
Right.
And I didn't see that in the representation of him in these books. And it's not because he didn't do the thing. He could still do all the things that happened in that book, but it was the way he did them, the way he responded to them, and how it felt to read it that didn't jive.
Having read those books, I'll just tell you real fast. with that, having read those books as well, it's a good chunk of them. In fact, I loaned a couple to you, and I apologized when I did it. Even though JMS gave the outlines, I really feel that got treated like how the Star Trek universe versus Star Wars universe got run, and that's the problems that you run into when your showrunner is not in charge of the books itself and it's hands off, because it no longer meets. That's one thing you were talking about James Patterson, Brad. With that he does is he has other writers more or less writing with him some of the books, and they do sound different, they do feel different. But James Patterson at least keeps a hand on the reins to make sure it fits the quality, has his name, has his brand on it, has to have his quality on it. And I think with what you were talking about, Jen, those hands were not. JMS never got his hands on those reins. I think Time Warner kept them off or whatever.
Well, it's also important to know that Peter David wrote some episodes of the show.
Yeah.
He wrote episodes in season 2 that are some of my favorite episodes. He wrote Soulmates, which is an episode all about the Centauri culture. But he wasn't the last one to touch those.
Right.
That went to the story team and specifically to Joe. And to the actors, because it's so important when you hand a story about the Centauri to Peter Dresdick. He knows Londo better than anybody does.
Yeah.
He knows Londo better than JMS does, because he spends so much time just being him.
Right.
And they made some very important changes to the script they were given based on those inputs. Like in the original script for Soulmates, Londo was supposed to be like really misogynistic and angry and bitter to his wives, and when the show went to air, Londo was more enjoying messing with them because that's him. He doesn't think that they're lesser because they're women, even though that's sort of a cultural thing for the Centauri. More so, he tolerates them and he's aware that they're awful and he's really excited to get rid of them. So he's having one last hurrah at their expense and nearly gets murdered for it.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely in character, and that is something that happened between script and screen.
Right.
I love that episode.
It's a good
Makes
episode.
me so happy.
And props to Peter David, the writer. He said that those wives followed him for so long. Like, he was trying to write this episode, and the episode got canned because his first treatment didn't do well. But the wives would not shut up in the back of his head until he finished it, so he wrote the script without Joe's permission and sent it to him when Joe told him specifically not to. And the episode still got made because he did such a good job. So just a prop there.
Brad, are you tying in?
I'm sorry to turn this into another Babylon 5 thing.
What you're bringing up is research, and I personally am a huge believer of researching the world of which you're writing in.
Mm-hmm.
There is a school of thought, especially with Hollywood, that you do not do that. That you need to have a fresh take on things. A lot of the cinematic universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has been written by people who do not have a encyclopedia knowledge of the comic book series that have run. They get the treatments of the characters, they might know the characters from loving them, and then you have the showrunners and you have the other people, the producers and stuff like that, who do. But, that is the thing. However, I would argue that knowing your universe is more important than any kind of outside opinion that you might be able to bring into it. I do like the idea of being able to update, however. Probably best done in the Bond series. I love Daniel Craig as James Bond. It's a wonderful take. It has completely messed with the Bond universe, in various ways. But I love that. I have no problem. Yeah, in good ways. But I love that we knew who Bond was. We've taken it, and now we've kind of expounded on it in different ways and everything else. Yes, they chucked out a lot of what Bond had done, but then in the end, it's kind of in essence saying, well, Daniel Craig is the prequel to Sean Connery.
Well, in a way, the Daniel Craig shows were a soft reboot of the franchise. It's like, we know who James Bond is. We don't have to do a hard reboot. But a soft reboot, where we just say, you don't remember what happened in those old movies? That's okay. We have everything you need right here to tell you about that.
But some of the improvements they made to Bond, the character are actually good things to make. I mean, sometimes I watch Sean Connery and I'm a little like, oh jeez.
I was gonna say one of my favorite character updates is Blade, as done by Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
The movie that arguably begun the whole superhero movie tidal wave.
Yes.
I would give it that
enjoy
badge.
today.
One of the few ones that succeeded in an era of horrid superhero movies.
Starring a black superhero who
in an R-rated movie.
Yep.
Yes.
It went against every single type, and that was a key element for its success, I think.
Yeah. Black superhero, anti-hero, black main character,
And
like
massive
potential love interest. Yeah. And like the original character had been like a black exploitation 70s, whatever.
I'm constantly getting Marvel and DC confused in my head.
I'm working with her, guys.
Yeah.
I'm working with her.
But anyways, something that hasn't been talked about, it's been sort of talked around, but it really goes back to research and knowing your universe. I'll go back to the DC cartoons. So, for example, if Batman, just for somebody well-known, and I know they're all in the same universe, in any case, Batman's going up against the Joker, fine. But occasionally, there's something that's of epic proportion. So let's say there's a nuclear bomb about to go off or whatever. Superman exists in this universe. Why doesn't he call Superman for help? This is a problem.
Because Batman would never call Superman for help.
Yes,
Right. Yes, exactly.
Tens of millions of people are about to die, and Superman isn't quite that much of a sociopath.
Yeah. Well, depending on which version you're watching.
Well, that's the point.
Batman 66 is very aware that sometimes you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Yeah.
But Superman could run in, grab the bomb, and shoot it into space.
He
but
could.
no one thinks, let's call Superman and have him save Gotham from this nuclear bomb.
They tried actually in the Joel Schumacher duology of the
I like
Batman.
the sarcastic way you say
Yeah,
that.
just because one of the Val Kilmer's Bruce Wayne in Batman Forever just dropped a line to saying the circus will be halfway to Metropolis by now, and then in the movie there's another one I'm speaking sarcastically. Batman and Robin. One of the very first lines is, "This is why Superman works alone," and they tried to get that going, and I think they were they had it in mind that they were going to tie it into the ill-fated Tim Burton Superman that they were working on, that wound up dying a very slow, painful death.
Kryptonite death.
I'm just thanking God on that one. Sorry.
Yeah.
So,
Last thoughts.
last
Last
thoughts. Oh my.
thoughts.
So
Yeah.
this is a time to bring this up then. How can writers create their own shared universes with other people?
Well, first you have to know other writers.
Okay, step one. Know other people to write in the shared universe. What then?
You have to have one God that has the final say in your series, that maintains the series Bible, that has the final say of what's allowed and what isn't allowed.
Or at least an easy understood series of rules.
Yeah.
In my universe, Batman doesn't kill anybody, and he chooses detective and stealth over combat, and everyone understands that, and then everyone can write the Batman from my universe.
And you could also make sure that you have enough space in your world to populate it with enough supporting characters so that they can kind of go off on their own little adventure. And then, later on you can bring them right back into the fold and for a bigger event that you're kind of building toward.
An Infinity War, if you will.
Exactly.
Well, doing something simple like Daredevil, who only lives in Hell's Kitchen, would be difficult to do. Doing all of New York, or all of the East Coast, or the entire world, that's
Having
going to give you
universe
that
galaxy.
sandbox, a big enough sandbox to play in.
Can you explain the sandbox bit, please? Because you mentioned it before, but not everybody's a gamer.
No, so the sandbox effect is basically that you have a space, and everybody gets to play in that space. And depending upon how big that space is, you can, it's all about how big you can make it.
Kind of what we're doing right now. You guys let me play in your sandbox last month, which I truly appreciate. So same sort of thing.
It's okay, our sandbox is big enough.
Our cannon is really loose.
One thing, though, that's not been said, and this is one thing for me to go back to, is I'm sorry, it's a legalese guy in me, but make sure that there's no contracts holding back the authors from being able to
You have to have
do this. Now, of course, self-pubbers, independent pubbers, you're easier to do. But if I'm going to say, let's say, John Lutz wanted to write a series with Robert Randisi.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm double checking my name with Brad. There. There may be. I don't remember who's published with who, but if they're published with two different publishers, those two publishers may not want their key authors.
They can't play
do
together.
it. They can't play together.
No, they can play together, just not under. They'd have to get a third publisher.
They have to get a third publisher
Because one publisher is not going to play with the other publisher, because then you're splitting up rights and you're splitting up monies and you're splitting up all
that,
this stuff.
I'm afraid of, is where I'm going with what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I mean that is a whole thing. I mean, we brought it up earlier. George and I wanted to write something in our shared universes. That would actually be difficult, because his stuff is published under Rocking Horse and mine's published under Treehouse, and that becomes an issue. However, if we wanted to, in a third world, we could shop that out to a publisher. We could publish it ourselves. That would be easy to do. In the new modern, now we can't do it can't be Excelsior's world, and it can't be
Thank you. I was waiting to jump in and say
that can't happen. But we can play in a third world.
Right.
Something a mix or whatever or anything like that. That is something that can happen. That's easy, and in fact, in the world we live in today, it's really easy to do with independent publishing.
Actually, just to kind of add on to what Kathleen asked, I actually kind of started my own little shared universe with both Excelsior and From Parts Unknown, because a major part in Excelsior's mythology is my main character, Matthew Peters. His parents died in a car accident. So what I did was I basically just had the promoter of my Gladiatorial Combat League, which is the centerpiece of From Parts Unknown, talking about in part 1, his grandfather was killed in that same accident. His was the other car.
Oh.
So that's a shared universe.
Yep.
Right there. It's basically just kind of taking those elements, that kind of element, and just they're going in completely different directions. But even even something that happens to one of my supporting characters in From Parts Unknown, actually he winds up becoming part of a prototype for something that's going to happen later on in Excelsior's universe. And just for a quick author note here, I had actually mistaken a little something in the Hasbro universe. It just hit me. It's not Inhumanoids that's involved. It's Visionaries. So
Visionaries. Oh,
yes,
nice.
Knights of the Magical Light.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just a quick thing to correct.
All the best cartoons from the 80s.
Yep.
And while we're correcting things, it was the Borderlands series, created by Terry Windling. They're Border Town novels and anthologies, but Border Town takes place in the Borderlands between the Elflands and our world. So, yeah.
You were right. We remembered correctly from the very beginning of the episode.
Aw, yeah. But it was created by Terry Windling, and other editors have worked with her on different anthologies, like Mark Allen Arnold and, let's see, who else? Delia Sherman and Ellen Kushner and Holly Black.
So with that, if you're sitting on the border with a fellow author friend and you're looking at wanting to do a shared universe, hopefully we've given you some ideas to be able to cross that border and be able to share that universe and start to merge them together.
And then you both get to freaking promote it.
Yay!
Yeah. So go out there, have a great week writing, and tune in next week for yet another interesting topic in the writing industry. Thank you.
GatewayCon? What is GatewayCon? The Gateway to Publishing Conference and Convention, brought to you by St. Louis Writers Guild, is a new, unique experience for writers looking for their work to be either traditionally published, independently published, self-published, or to further their writing career. Coming in June 2017, GatewayCon will provide opportunities for writers to pitch their work to agents, hone their craft regardless if it is genre fiction or nonfiction, and obtain expert critiques. Get to meet vendors and experts who can help your writing get attention, and all writers get their work in front of their audience. Writers will get to network with agents, publishers, and others in your genre. Gateway to Publishing Conference and Convention will be in St. Louis, June 16th through the 18th, 2017. For more information, visit www.stlwritersguild.org or look for GatewayCon on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. GatewayCon,
opening the gateway for writers to reach their readers.
Have you ever written an audio play? Have you even considered writing one? Visit www.windingtrailsmedia.com because currently we are looking for audio plays to produce. Again, that is www.windingtrailsmedia.com and visit calls for scripts. And while you're at it, please sign up for the newsletter and you will find that icon at the bottom of every page.
Did you know that Right Pack Radio has an international audience? How would you like to reach that audience in regards to your books, your book services, your author services, or more? Go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com and look under advertising for more information. If you don't have a script, that's not a problem. We will be happy to work with you. Once again, go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com for more information.
The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.